Hello and welcome to another session in the Spark series. So in this session, we'll look at how we can achieve the pivoting, right? We'll pivot this data using the Spark code. So pivoting is basically transforming the row to columns. You might have already done this using Excel where you have set of rows and you've transposed the rows to columns. So the same functionality we can achieve using a Spark code. So we'll do that. So what I have here is a simple code. I'm using the same bank transactions.cac. This is a file dataset that we have been using for a while now. A simple import statements. We have the same import statements, and I'm printing this data here, and I'm also printing the schema. So this is the output of this, and nothing special. We have seen this many times, right? So now from here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select few columns first, and then I'm going to pivot these columns, right? So let me start. So I'm going to take another df here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the required column. So I'm going to say select, and I will be using the call. So let's select few columns from here. Let's pick up customer gender, and let's pick up one more column. So let's pick up one more column. So we will take customer location here, and let's pick a customer account balance. All right. So this is string here because it is coming from the file. So let us cast this, right? So we know this is an integer. We're going to get integer data in this. So what I'm going to do is I am going to cast this, right? So I have to say dot, I have to cast this. So let me cast this to an integer, right? And let me alias this. So I will say dot as. So and then I'm going to give the new column name, or let me just give the same column name, doesn't matter. So yeah, so I have three columns selected. One is the customer gender, customer location, then we have customer account balance, and where we have cast this as integer, and we are aliasing it as account balance. All right, so a simple select statement. So let me first do a show. I'm going to save this and I'm going to run this. So I will show you the data here, and then what we will do is we will pivot this data, right? So we will group by on particular column, and then we're going to pivot the other two columns, or we'll pivot the one column, and we'll display the data, right? All right, so here we have the data. So what you see here is you have the customer gender, customer location, customer account balance, right? So what I can do is I can group by customer location, and I can pivot this. So when I mean pivot the customer gender, what I mean is the data that you see here, right? This F and M and other values, this will now become columns, right? We have four distinct values in the customer gender. So those four distinct we will have four columns instead, right? So that is your pivoting. You just transform this data, the rows, into the columns. So now how do we achieve that? So let's take another data frame. Let me call it as pivot, and I'm going to use df. First thing I have to do is I have to group by. So I will group by customer location, and then I will pivot. So I have to say pivot, and what is the pivot column? It should be customer gender, and let's do some aggregate. So I'm going to say sum, and the other column that we have is the account balance. So I'm going to use this. Okay, so this is what we want to do. So let me show this data, and then I will explain. It will be better to explain. All right, so let's save this, and I'm going to execute this, right? So what it will do is basically we are going to group by on customer location, and we're going to get the sum of the account balance, but we also are going to do a pivot, the customer gender. So that will have the customer gender distinct value. So for a particular customer location, right, and for a particular gender, what would be the sum of account balance? That is what we are trying to see. So if you look at this, basically null, f, m and t, these are your customer gender. These are the distinct values, so they appear here as rows. Now we have transformed them into columns, right? So how do you read this? So for this particular customer location, if it is m, this is the total customer account balance. For this customer location, if this is the customer gender, this would be the total sum. So this is how your pivoting does. So it is very useful when you are trying to retrieve this data over a dashboard, where you can basically identify, let's say I want to see for for a particular location, let's say the KK district, right? So how much of a account balance is there for a particular gender, let's say m. So I can just simply read this is the location and this is the value for m. So this is very useful feature, especially when you are displaying some reports, right? A very simple concept. We just transform certain rows into the columns so that it will be easier for us to read the data or do some aggregations, right? So this is all about pivoting. I hope this was clear, and I will see you guys in my next class.